Okay, so today on the Plant Cunning Podcast, we have Kira Sutherland, and Kira is a nutritionist, an herbalist, homeopath, and medical astrologer. And we're very excited to have you on the show, Kira. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Lots to talk about, I'm sure.
So much to talk about.
So our first question is, what brought you to the plant path?
Oh, what did get me on it? I was living in Europe in my early 20s and didn't really know about naturopathy or herbal medicine. I mean, maybe I did a little bit, but I got quite sick and got sent to a naturopath herbalist and I was already really into nutrition, but I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. I was already on a bit of a spiritual path, and I was like, wow, that I mean, you might remember this happening to you guys as well, but I remember thinking, of course, the earth supplies us with medicine. Like that just was like, oh my God, how did nobody talk to me about this before? So getting really sick, and I actually so I saw a naturopath herbalist, a German one, and they're like amazing with their herbs. And she actually then sent me to a Austrian fasting clinic for 3 weeks. So my introduction was intense. And fasting and herbs and all kinds of, taking sun, all kinds of the traditional healing. So that's where it found me. Yeah, illness. I think a lot of people find it with illness, don't they?
Yeah, we do get that a lot for sure. I definitely can relate to that with my asthma. Like, oh, I don't need to take albuterol. I can take a mullein tea or a lobelia tincture and I'm good. Like, that's exciting.
So awesome. So awesome. And are you allowed to use lobelia? It's banned in Australia.
Oh, yeah, we are. And it grows everywhere.
Yeah.
In the woods around here.
I know, and it's so beautiful, but no. We have a few things that are banned here. It's very sad.
Yeah. Sad.
Lobelia, though, is not the most fun herb to take.
We don't have lobelia, and we're not allowed to use comfrey internally.
Oh. Yeah,
we're not. Comfrey is like one of those limited use ones too.
Yeah, we could do external.
So how about some of your teachers and mentors along your path or schools? Are you self-taught, or did you have certain teachers that guided you?
Yeah, so luckily I moved to Australia right when I was kind of 23, 24, and they have incredible schools here. It's funny, we're, off in the middle, we're off by ourselves, but the herbal, I always say it with an H because that's what we say here, but the herbal and naturopathy schools here have always been really strong, and it's a big community. And so I studied here formally. It was when I studied 30 years ago, it was known as an advanced diploma, which is kind of like going to community college in the US, I would equate it to, but it's now a degree, but we're an undergrad degree. I know herbs in the US is taught very differently. Oh, I guess you can go to like Bastyr and places like that. So we're kind of equivalent to how Bastyr does an undergrad herbs. But I studied, oh my God, 30 years ago. So my teachers, I would mention, you wouldn't know, but the books that rocked my world were herbal books that rocked my world. Ooh, Simon Mills from the UK. I don't know if you know him. He comes out lecturing here a lot, and he's just amazing. He has a traditional Chinese medicine and traditional herbal background, and he just weaves these great stories about herbs. And the other book that really rocked my world was David Hoffman. I love his stuff. And we don't, I teach at university in Australia. I teach in the naturopathy and nutrition degrees or herbal degrees, and we don't use his books anymore. It's very much becoming a degree in Australia. We have to stay very, very evidence-based, and we do teach traditions, but I don't think, hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying this, I don't think we teach enough traditional grassroots herbs and energetics. And I kind of have this worry that we're losing that vitalistic principle of how the body works. And that's my thing at the moment, is making sure that exists.
That's awesome. Really important.
Yeah, it's a tough balance sometimes because, like,
super tough.
on the outskirts, on the fringe of what's mainstream. You want to have approval from the mainstream, and you want your clients to feel like you know what you're doing. But then sometimes you get like too lost in the bits about it that aren't even the most important thing. Like the structure that holds it is, in my opinion, is that vitalistic thing, spiritual thing.
And I think, I just really, there's a book in me about that, or a bunch of blogs that will come soon, because I teach under this, very evidence-based model, which I love, and it's great. And it is about acceptance as much as naturopaths and herbalists are ever going to be accepted by the mainstream. Let's be real. I just really have this mission. Maybe I'm 50 now, and I have this mission, as I have to admit, to getting into that elder space of holding that torch of, making sure we don't lose those traditional vitalistic ideas and principles. For the students that are coming through that are so evidence-based taught, they're like, what do you mean? Oh, there's this whole energetic side to herbs. There's this whole, and it's interesting because, we happily accept traditional Chinese medicine and its energetics, and we happily accept Ayurveda and the doshas and all this stuff. And it's like, well, what about our Western energetics? We so, dismiss it in some ways. So that's really where, as I know you guys know, but I practice medical astrology, and at the minute everyone hears astrology, they're like, oh my God, you're a herbalist and you're an astrologer. That's even weirder, and which I love, but it puts me even more fringe. Yet it's just practicing the energetics of the body. It's, it used to be part of medicine, but we throw it out because they want to clump it with, whether it's and I love all types of astrology, but
So how did you get into the medical astrology? Did that come after the herbalism training and the naturopathic training?
No, came at the same time, really. I grew up in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s. And one of and I'm born from two scientists, but my mom was really open to alternative things as well. And one of her best friends was a massage therapist / Reiki / astrologer. And she used to teach
Great
me
best
things.
friend to have.
I know, she was amazing. She was amazing, actually. So she ended up as like my first little mentor. She secretly was like planting stuff for me, and she got me interested in astrology. And then I formally studied it at the same time I formally studied naturopathy. It was actually taught at the same school. I was like, oh my God, I can finally do this, formally, because with astrology, you can self-teach, absolutely. But it was like so nice to have somebody else teach it. And then, so I was looking at all the old herbal, Culpeper has all these, there's the books I love, but Culpeper goes into the energetics of herbs astrologically. And at the same time I was studying astrology, and I was like, and then I remember learning medical astrology existed. And I was like, well, here's our system. This is the system I needed. Because everyone was graduating as herbalists and naturopaths. And they were like, oh, I'm going to go do traditional Chinese medicine. I'm going to do Ayurveda. And I was like, where's our energetics? We must have it. And so finding medical astrology was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to, But I am a self-taught medical astrologer. I was traditionally taught astrology, but at that time, there was no one really teaching it where I was. And there was shows my age, there was no internet at that point. There's no online learning that makes life so much easier.
It's a game changer. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's been so recent, really. I mean, all these new classes, it's only been in the last 10 years, I think, that there's even been a possibility. And then with COVID and everything now, there's so many more.
Oh my God. It's just, I remember teaching online for one of the astrology schools, teaching medical astrology. And that probably started in 2015. And that was like, oh my God, big online classes for anyone in the world. And now you don't even think about it, right?
Yeah. So how did you go about studying medical astrology on your own? Because I'm sure that was a little difficult to track down the books and know where to go. Like, how did you do that?
So I literally located every book I could find. So whether it was looking on, again, I don't even think there were online bookstores at that point. I feel old all of a sudden.
No, don't
Um,
feel old, it's
no,
fine.
I'm fine. I don't feel that old. I don't. But I'm like, oh, it's so weird to talk about that pre versus post, right? Like I have
Yeah.
a 16-year-old, a Gen Zer who
Yeah.
can't even concept life without being able to Google it and
I
whatever.
know, yeah.
I just found medical astrology books. I just located them in astrology bookstores, and so I literally bought every medical astrology book I could find and read it front to back to front. But I started just applying it. And so the way I practice medical astrology might be a little bit different to how other people do it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not breaking any traditional rules, but I see it more as an energetic system to help me decide how to treat. But underneath, I always have my core herbalist, nutritionist underneath. So it's this weird combination of the two. So I'm probably, what I really do is I look at the natal chart. I guess I taught myself to look at the natal chart for your strengths and weaknesses and how to support somebody's natal vitality is really what I kind of created by myself from all these other books and teachers. But yeah, I wasn't formally taught this is what you do to this. It just kind of evolved off of trial and error, I guess.
Yes. So that was one of our questions, was how do you approach the natal chart from that perspective of a nutritionalist, a naturopath, and herbalist? Like, what are you looking?
So, like when I do a consult, when someone comes to me for a consult, I'm obviously going to get them to fill out a bit of a health form first, just so I know what's going on with them. It's not, I'm not a psychic. This is not, let me tell you, medical astrology. And I mean, this is how I feel about it. Medical astrology isn't there for me to go, these are going to be your diseases, because you also have to be careful with medical astrology because it's not a positive thing, right? It's like looking for ailments, looking for problems, but then it's what to do with it. But I'm not going to predict, just because someone's a Leo, I'm not going to be like, oh, you'll have heart disease, like, because you're going to create that in somebody's head, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be so cautious. So I get people to tell me what's going on with them. And then I go and I look for where those triggers are in a natal chart, or if we have timing of illness, we'll look at transits, we'll look at what triggered things off, because your natal chart is really your potential strengths and weaknesses. It's not fact, it's not everybody that's a Taurus is not going to have thyroid trouble, so I look at the natal chart more as like a constitutional overview of who you are, where your weaknesses possibly can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So are you looking at like, I mean, you can see in terms of energetics, you have hot, dry, moist.
Yeah. When you first look at a chart, I'm absolutely going to look at the elemental theory, the elemental makeup of a person. I'm going to look at that for sure. Are they missing an element? Are they, excess in an element? And that's always in the background. And then I especially look at what their rising sign is, what that's doing, what's happening in that first house. Because the first house in the rising sign or the ascendant that's the basis of your physical body and your constitutional makeup. As much as we go, oh, we are our sun and moon, the first house rules the physical body. So I really look at the ascendant tends to be where we have most of our weaknesses. Often we're great at expressing that sun sign. So I look at the ascendant, the first house, I look at the sun, I look at the moon, and then I'm going to look at the sixth house, which is traditionally the house of illness, but I also see it as the house of preventative health, like where you have to do your work to stay healthy.
Yeah, your daily, your habits.
Yeah.
Habits.
Great way to think about that.
Habits, rich, and I love the sixth house like that. So yes, there are a lot of modern views I take to that, because traditionally you'd be like, no, that's just the house of illness and disease. But it's like the house, sixth house rules hard work. Health is really hard work. Daily, it is.
Yeah,
staying healthy all the time.
It is.
And I'm actually a month away from finishing my first book in medical astrology, and it's on the houses. Not Not anything to do with the controversy of what house system to use. I don't
Right.
care what house system people use, because that
Uh-huh.
always comes like whatever works for people, I'm good with. I'm writing a book on how somehow I ended up as a really house-based astrologer in medical astrology,
Oh,
because
that makes sense.
so much of the physical body is represented by the houses. And often I see ailments happening because of a planet in a house, but the house has this huge overriding influence into where in the body the problem's happening, and then gives you great, ideas as to what to go do with, how to make that planet happy with that house, right?
Right.
Like you got a planet having trouble in the second house, you get them out on the earth, you get them walking barefoot, you get them gardening, you get them doing earthy, like if you look at the houses in their traditional rulerships, like Aries, some people don't like this and they balk because this is, everyone goes, oh, that's cookie cutter astrology. House does not equal sign, does not equal planet. But in medical astrology, there is massive overlap of those. And all the medical astrologers do talk about that, how like Judith Hill, Jane Ritter Patrick, both actually have a whole system where they talk about first house, similar rulership to Aries rulership, body parts, and ruling planets.
So, okay, in the zodiacal man, we have Aries as the head, and Taurus is the neck, and
Yeah.
so down to Pisces is
Yep.
the feet. So,
Yep.
what you do is the first house is the head, and then the second house
Yes.
is the neck, and so down, and then the
Yeah.
12th.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so
And-
then you have, because you can look at the planets in the sign and the planets in the house and then the planets themselves, and you have kind of, because
Yeah.
not everybody born with Saturn in Aries, is going to have Saturn problems in their head. That's like a lot of people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's 3 years of people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And how it expresses, there's so many different ailments that can happen. Like I do have Saturn in Aries, just to put it out there.
Oh.
And in the first house. And I may or may not have a sun sign in Aries as well. And so that together makes up this lots of accidents to the head, lots of bumps and bruises to the head. And sure enough, I've got 6 sets of stitches in my body, and 5 of them are in my head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's first house and Aries, and then Saturn, which can be about scars and bumps. And I even have like a little bony lump from too many hits. So the whole Saturn has created some extra calcification on my skull.
That's
Not to talk about my health stuff, but
thank you for that example, though.
It's so literal though. Yeah.
Very literal.
It is literal.
It's ridiculously literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't taught to be a house-based astrologer, and I know that at the moment there's huge controversy in houses, but it's amazing to look at that as a way. I guess why I like it so much is it's a way of treatment for me, and it's a way that astrologers that don't do a lot of medical astrology can work with their clients, because if there's a problem happening in the 5th house, I don't care what planet it is. You could be having problems with Venus in the 5th, or Jupiter or Pluto, whatever. Take that planet and nourish it through the 5th house activities and creativity and music or dancing or sex or whatever's working for people, right? And because you're going to have problems with planets no matter what. Like, we're all going to have health problems. But to me, we have to have something to go do with it. I don't want to just do a read and go, here's your health stuff. You're going to, you've got Lyme disease and I can see it coming from here. It's like, how can we go play with that planet? Because no matter how, whether there's an ailment in the planet, or you go, oh my God, I've got this planet and it's in its detriment and it's so suppressed. And it's like, you might have a planet in its detriment, but you still got to use it, right? Like, sometimes we get so stuck in that traditional, oh my God, this is such a compromised planet, that we just hold on to that. But it's like, well, I still got to go use it. I still got to, you might have a Venus that's in all kinds of trouble, but you still got to go take her out to play and nourish her. And so I look at the house as kind of a grid for what to go do with planets, besides herbs and nutrition and and cell salts or essences, there's so many ways to work with something.
Yeah, but I think that's really important. I mean, our last episode was with a Vedic astrologer, and in Ayurveda and Vedic astrology, they have a lot of different ways to remediate a planetary problem. And, medicine is one way, but also giving offerings is another way. Donating is another way. Like doing mantras is another thing. And I like that what you're doing is similar. And like, because they're like going dancing can be remediation.
That's a remediation for sure. Music is the most beautiful remediation, getting the body moving. And, in the Vedics often use gemstones, but we have all of that in the West too. And we have herbs, and I use flower essences all the time for remediation. I do a whole mix for people if in a reading. You can do a whole natal chart flower essence mix, which I think is just a beautiful way for people to kind of work with some of that stuck energy. There's cell salts, there's, oh my God, there's so many different ways.
So when you're making one of those mixes for a specific client, are you working on, like, say, remediating a certain planet that's in detriment, or is it kind of a combination of everything you just said about the houses and the elements?
I'm not often basing them just on detrimental planets. I'm more like, what's the planet cause? When people show up for a reading with me, some people come and they just are there going, tell me about me, which is awesome. But most of the time people are coming with an ailment already. And then I'm showing them where that's coming from in the chart. So we will work on that, right? And but often there's a recipe, and I didn't invent this, and I actually don't know who invented what's called the maintenance remedy. If anybody knows that's listening who first decided to do this, there's a maintenance remedy where you take somebody's sun, because that's who they are, their vitality. You do their moon, which is emotions, and what doesn't the moon rule? So you do someone's sun, moon, your ascendant, because that's your physical body. You do Saturn, because that's where we create fear and restriction and limit ourselves. And you put in the ruler of Mercury, because that's your mind and worry and your nervous system. And so you use those 5 things. And then you can also, depending on the house system, if you're using a house system that changes signs halfway through a house, if there's any other planets sitting in the first house in a different sign to the ascendant. So like, say someone was, Aquarius rising, but they're using Placidus, and there's a planet sitting in Pisces in the first, I would put the Pisces in as well, because the first house is the physical body. So that's the traditional maintenance remedy, but I will use that, or I just go off of, you're stuck with these 2 planets, let's use these. And then I would always put in sun, moon, ascendant. At times I've played with someone's progress chart instead of their natal chart, but I had a whole class. The thing about not teaching face-to-face so much these days is I used to bring in stuff and we'd be like, okay, everybody take your cell salt, or everybody take your flower essence for your sun this week. And then the next week we would take the flower essence for your progressed sun, just to see what felt different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I missed that.
Yeah. And then you can actually taste the thing and feel it, and you have a visceral warming experience.
Yeah. Whether it's cell salts or flower essences, I do that a lot. I do a lot of playing with that, just because I think they're great ways to gently remediate somebody's chart.
And so those are both homeopathy remedies, right? Homeopathy.
Yes. Yeah.
That's definitely something we haven't talked as much about either. But so I know that you can correlate the cell salts to the signs.
Yes.
Is there do you have correlations or correspondences between like different planet, like flower essences?
Yes.
And signs too?
So homeopathy, for those that don't know, do I need to explain homeopathy?
Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
Oh,
sure.
That's a little bit tricky too. So Samuel Hahnemann is credited as creating homeopathy, but if you go back in history, he got his ideas from other people. So it probably goes back thousands of years, but it's the idea. And again, like Paracelsus, who was this chemist who had this beautiful, he's the first guy, we kind of call him our first chemist of the scientific world, right? He really got into dosages of things, but really people were doing stuff long before that as well. But he has this quote around, all medicines can be toxic. It's just the dosage that makes it healing or toxic. And I've totally mangled that quote, but that's the general idea of what he said. It's not the word for word. It was much prettier when he said it. So there's this idea in homeopathy. So we got regular herbs. We make tinctures, we have teas, we use it as, we use what's known as the gross or the whole herb, right? The raw herb. So in homeopathy, it's the idea that if you dilute down, we'll pretend we're just using herbs. So say we're going to use echinacea. If I dilute down a tincture almost to the point where there's no molecules left of the echinacea, we've taken echinacea and we take some inert solution and we combine them together, shake it up, because then the molecules actually spread over the gradient. And then we take a little bit of that and we put it into another bit of an inert solution, shake it up, and you divide things down to very specific amounts, but you can divide things down so that there legally is no molecule left of that herb or substance you're using. It's the idea that the soul or the vibrational energy of that herb, or that we use a lot of poisons in, venoms and things like that in homeopathy. We even use, toxic metals. We use actual disease states. We actually take and dilute down so that it's more the essence or the vibrational soul of the medicine is still there. But if you were to test it, nothing's in there. And it's the idea that is shifting your body on a totally different level. And it's the idea that if health is kind of this equilibrium where we're right here, through illnesses, we kind of get pendulumed in one direction. And by giving, in homeopathy, we use sympathetic remedies, like cures like. You get bit by a snake, you give an anti-venom. Whereas homeopathy is like, you get stung by a bee, we actually give you bee venom, diluted down, because it's the idea that the bee venom's moved you here. If I give you bee venom homeopathically, it's going to shift and then bring it back. So it's the idea of treating by sympathy, like cures like. My favorite example is if you cut an onion, you get red, teary eyes, runny nose, itchy face, right?
Yeah. We
give onion for hay fever symptoms, because onion creates in a healthy person what we use it for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. No, it's making sense.
So yeah. Questions on homeopathy?
So usually we do the antipathy. So if you have a problem, then you do the opposite. But with you're doing the same.
Yeah. And in herbs, we do treat sympathetically. Like you have a fever and we give diaphoretic, we give things like elder and yarrow, which are stoking the fire of your fever, because energetically then the body kind of reacts to that. So we do use herbs in both directions. Like antibiotics are a classic antipathy, right? You have an illness, let's kill it. So flower essences, back to the original question, are homeopathic remedies made from flowers, but they're actually, the traditional way to make flower remedies is you take a bowl of spring water in a crystal bowl and you float the flowers on top of the bowl and put it out into the sunlight. And so the sun is potentizing the soul of the flowers into that water. There is another method with barks where you boil it, but we don't need to go there. And then, so the remedy then ends up in the water. You stabilize it either with apple cider vinegar if you don't want to use alcohol, or traditionally you stabilize it in brandy. And then you take drops of that. And flower essences were created, Bach. The flower essences I most use are the Bach or Bach flowers from England. But flower essences in general are given for emotional states. They're not for physical ailments. They are shifting emotional patterns and fears and despondency and impatience. Yeah.
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 It's just so crazy that such a dilute form can
Oh,
have
yeah.
such a impact on folks. Do you see that in your
Yeah.
practice, that the flower essences do shift
Oh,
people's
yeah.
state?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're very subtle. Often it's not like you take it, you're like, oh my gosh, but it's this subtle shifting of your soul or your emotional state that I find, people often say, how long do I take it for? I'm like, you take it till you forget to take it, because once you forget to take it, unless you're super forgetful,
Right.
it means you're pretty much done, right? So you take a couple drops under or on the tongue a few times a day, and yeah, it's this subtle. I think we forget how subtle everything is in our body, and we get into this, oh, we need, especially in herbs these days, these big doses, these gross dosages, or we're not giving turmeric anymore, we're giving curcumin, we're synthesizing out little chemical constituents and giving these big doses. And there's something beautiful in herbs about using that whole plant and not just the chemical constituent, because you have all those 1,000 other chemicals that are buffering and doing amazing things. And I don't think we create things better than nature. I just don't.
No. So do you think it is like the spirit of the plant that is working our spirit directly?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what Bach, was going for. He was like, so many of our ailments are actually created through our emotional state. Look at right now, the big issue for everybody is, and I've never seen so much anxiety in my life as the last decade, right? I've been a practitioner for 30 years. Two out of every 3 people showing up has anxiety. They've got, not so much depression, but there's just so much high wired at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that. I mean, maybe we're more comfortable saying I have anxiety these days, but there's so much more going on for us energetically, emotionally than we're
we know
admitting to.
It's the internet. I think we know too much.
Well, also being on the internet
like
8 hours a day.
Yeah. That
like
can anxiety,
I know. It's funny. Yesterday, I was seeing some clients, and one of them was describing all their symptoms, and then I hung up. And I was like, oh, I don't feel very good. I'm really achy and a bit fevery. And I couldn't tell if I was just getting sick or if I had energetically, I was processing through her. I was trying to convince myself I was processing her symptoms.
Yeah.
But in reality, I just got sick.
Yeah. But I think there's definitely a lot of anxiety in the world right now. The astral realm is not very friendly. I know a lot of people who have a lot of serious depression, substance abuse, but
and we're so busy, we're forgetting, we're so preoccupied. I'm going to watch, the minute I'm downtime, I'll go watch Netflix, or I'll do, and we're not getting out in nature as much. We're not, there's
rounding
all
down
those subtle, and I think flower essences for me, or and for those people that are into astrology, there's astrological essences, right? You can make essences out of what's happening astrologically right now, and people have been doing this for forever, and people have been making essences out of crystal. You can put crystals into water out in the sun and make, this is homeopathy. It's all homeopathy, and it's been going on for forever. But I love making astrological essences.
Okay,
I really want to get into that.
So what instead of having a plant that corresponds with a sign or a planet, what you're doing is you're making the flower essence while the sign, like the moon, is in the same sign.
I'm not even using flowers. I'm literally just using water outside, whether it's in the sunshine or the moonlight. Other people would be like, that's astrological magic, right? If you go back to astrological magic, and I don't even know the history of how long people have been doing that, but for remediation, people do all kinds of ritual and prayer at certain times with certain astrological, invocation. People do a lot of invocation. I'm not even using the right words, but
we do that.
We all do it, and I do it. I do it as well. But I've started now making essence. You can make different. People do. What's the word? It's my fevered brain's not coming out with it. At certain times, you can write your prayer, or you do, use Thank you. You know, the word's just not coming.
Yeah.
Alternate ways to do petitions. And so one of my favorite ways at the moment that I've just been experimenting with more myself than anyone else is doing, I do petitions and I'm making essences at that time, whether I'm using them on my body as a spray or I'm actually taking them internally. I'm being quite cautious with this though, because I don't, you know, that's working with some serious stuff. So yeah,
definitely can be.
Yeah.
So are you doing like full elections where like you're trying to get Saturn in Aquarius on the ascendant?
Yeah. So I'm not great at the patience of calculating stuff like that. And there are some incredibly expert people at doing that. So I'm following a couple different people that actually give you, oh, this is you know, this is happening on this date. And I'm deciding, you know, sometimes I think, oh yeah, I'll do all 5 of those this month. And then I only make it to 1 of them. Right. You know, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, so I'm following a few different astrological magic practitioners and using, I'm learning from them, right? I'm a total novice in that. Whereas what I have been doing for quite a few years, separate to that, but this is astrological magic, is making lunar waters. So making, and yeah, I'm not going to do it during an eclipse, right? Nobody's that crazy, but hopefully, but I'm making astrological waters, and you do have to kind of ignore what else is happening. Otherwise you would never make them, right? So I'm making, you know, people do astrological waters a lot at the full moon and the new moon. That's been a really common thing to do for forever in Wiccan and pagan traditions, right? But I'm in love with the 8 lunar phases, you know, the traditional 8, you know, new moon, crescent, first quarter, that whole thing. And going back into the more we're going to say pagan or earth religions, what those mean, and for creative cycles of building and release and all that. And so I've been making lunar waters over the last, I don't know, 5 years. I've been trying to capture every astrological sign under every lunar phase. I have thousands of bottles sitting at home.
Wow.
They're all in here somewhere, labeled.
That's a massive project. That's pretty sweet. So it's every day. Every day.
Yeah, not
like
every day, but like every 3 days. Okay. Yeah. So I do have, it's not quite a complete set yet because of not wanting to being away and not making them, or being, you know, it being an eclipse, or like I was trying to make some while I was in a hotel. And I was setting stuff up outside on this little balcony, you know, and I had my whole little altar set up in my ritual Bible, and the service kept getting rid of it. Finally was like leaving. I had to leave notes. I'm like, please leave this alone.
Please don't touch my altar.
Don't touch my magic water. Yeah. So it was hilarious. I got back to the room and it was like completely, you know, the feather and the little stick of wood, and I had all the elements around it from stuff I was collecting in nature near this hotel. It was gone. But yeah, so I have all the full moons and new moons, and I'm somewhere between 9 and almost 12 for every other moon phase with all the astrological signs. Yeah, takes a long time to make.
Yeah, definitely. And so then now that
I also had to figure out,
no, go ahead,
where to put the balls so that my cat didn't decide that was my husband and daughter they're like, you know, the cat's been licking out of that. And I was like, oh no. So I had to get rid of like, it was only a couple days. I decided to put bowls in a certain spot, and they're like, not a cat gets to that. No, good to know. No cat essences, I promise. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Cats, it's pretty hard to be safe from cats.
I was drying a whole table full of salve one time with the lids off, and then came back into the room and saw several kitten prints in a couple of the salves from them jumping on the table. So
cats are amazing like that. Yeah, we used to in Canada, we used to have like a butter tub with no lid, right? Because it's so cold there. In winter, you don't need it. I came down one day, the cat just, I'm like, oh my God, how long has the cat been eating my butter?
Oh no.
Yeah, we did. We had that happen when our cat was pregnant, and she had like 7 kittens,
Yeah.
and it was her first time, and she just was trying
Eating
she could
everything.
not stop eating.
Yeah.
And
Anything.
yeah, but she definitely got the butter more than a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Butter dishes need a lid for a reason.
Right,
Yes, for
right.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay,
back
so
to
you
lunar
have
essences. Yeah.
yeah, you have the 8 lunar essences that you
Yeah.
make and you sell. So how does one use them, and how does it help
Yeah.
you to align with
So
the moon or
So
whatever else?
yeah, so there's that whole theory. I mean, and everybody's been doing this forever. You know, that new moon is that beginning initiating energy. And so you have that build up to the full moon of creative potential. And yes, there's squares that happen at that time. So there's struggle, but it's that building phase of new moon to full moon, that peak, and then that releasing phase or resting phase. I also teach, you know, regular naturopathy. I'm actually also a sports nutritionist, which a lot of people don't know. Well, some people know that and they don't know my other side, but there's this whole way, especially for females or those with a menstrual cycle. There's all this research that's just come out about eating slightly differently for your cycle, or doing different styles of exercise for your cycle, depending on what phase you're in. And so I've been playing with, and it doesn't matter, you don't have a menstrual cycle, but overlapping that as well. So I've gone into this kind of layers of information, but to go back to the essences, I then went through the definitions of all the Bach flowers and all the Californian essences, the FES, they're called. I don't actually know what that stands for.
That's another brand, like Bach.
Another blend of flower essences that's made in California. And there's flower essences. I'm sure there's probably New York flower essences. There's Alaskan, there's flower essences that have been created. Any flower probably can be an essence. It just takes that intuitive person to decide what that energetically means. I'm in Australia, and there's a huge set of we call the bush flower essences, created by Ian White. But because I'm North American born, I've always been more drawn to northern hemisphere flowers. And so I went through the Californian essences and the Bach essences, and I found 3 flower essences that I feel sit really well with each of the moon phases. So that initiating energy of the new moon, getting out of inertia and getting started in projects, or that full moon kind of, going through the whole almost pagan idea of what each of the moon phases mean, and matching flower essences to go with those. So I now make lunar essences that have almost all of the 12 astrological signs as well. Eventually they will have them all, plus 3 flower essences that I think fit that phase. And so I've created like this set of 8 flower essences. Cool. Lunar essences. Yeah. So I finished them there's still a work in process, because when I get a new moon phase in a sign, but so I've been using those for the last year, and they've been really interesting to try on myself. I sent them to like every friend I know. I do sell them now, but and I made a little booklet to go with it that explains everything. But yeah, it's been fascinating, and I've been giving them to everybody, but it's been especially fascinating for those with a menstrual cycle, what happens to their menstrual cycle when they take these. And not that they were created for that. What I think is really nice, I'm going to back up. What I think is really nice about taking essences, like a whole set for the moon cycle, is it takes you into the 6th house astrologically. It every day before I take them, I'm like, okay, what I check in, what moon phase am I in? What sign is it in? Not that really matters, but it reminds you, it's like a meditation every day of the energetics of the day. And that's been really, because health is a ritual, right? That's where health comes from. So I like the idea that it makes you be more ritualistic with your health.
Definitely, because you're taking the same one for a couple days with
about
the
3 days.
3 days with that cycle of the moon, with those flowers that you've chosen to be a part of it. And so you're really tapping in and creating that ritual for yourself. And so are you finding for people who menstruate, like you talked about them having some interesting results? Like, what are you seeing?
Oh yeah, just like easier cycles or cycles getting more in rhythm, short, someone having a, and I can't say that that's what they're, it's not going to fix everybody's messed up cycle, but they were just like, oh, it was just a smoother cycle, or it kind of shifted it by a few days and it was more of a 28-day cycle, although there's nothing wrong if you have a 32-day cycle. They just felt more in tune, easier cycle. People that are, I have a lot of friends that are perimenopausal age that skip cycles, and they were like, oh, I kind of came back into more regular cycles for a while. That was really interesting.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
Love to.
I also made a set, getting really out there.
I made
a set for a couple girlfriends, which I can do for people. I was in Glastonbury a few years ago in the UK, which is, for those people who aren't aware, is, hypothetically where Avalon, it's a sacred site. It's meant to be where all the ley lines match up in the UK. And there's a very sacred, there's actually 2 wells right in Glastonbury. I have this fascination with springs, like sacred springs. There's something, so anytime I make it near a sacred spring, I make an essence from that spring.
Oh, cool.
As well. So I'm like, don't ask me what I'm doing with those, but so I just have thousands of little bottles around my house is basically what happens. But I made essences from the chalice well, which has this really rust color to it, like the menstrual cycle. And then there's another less known well in Glastonbury called the white well that I made another essence from. And so I actually put the chalice well essence into the first half of the cycle, because the first half, the menstrual cycle, is this getting really out there? I feel like I'm really out there. Okay. For those that aren't aware, the first day of your cycle is actually the first day you bleed. A lot of people think the cycle is at the end. It's not. Like the new moon is actually the first day you bleed. Ovulation would be like the full moon, and then the 2 weeks and the last week of the darker moon, it would be like the PMSE period. And if you're not cycling like that, if you're cycling opposite to that, there's nothing wrong with that either. So let me just, because people will now freak out that they're not getting their period at the new moon. So I put the chalice essence, which is more around blood, into the first half of the month. And I put the white well into the second half of the month, just to see. I warned those girlfriends that I gave that to, just to see if that shifted periods even more. So that was
interesting.
That's really
Who
interesting.
knows? Who knows?
Yeah. So this is like moon remediation too. And a lot of people don't, really realize how important the moon is. It's, important for, it's the sun is the sun, but the moon is, it's every other planet, every month,
every month. Yes.
It brings it all back. It's like, it's the in horary, it's the secondary significator of the querent, so it's all, it signifies you. And people can have some really difficult moon placements, too.
Yeah, whereas in horary decumbiture, which is medical, the moon actually is the second significator of the illness. Right?
I think yeah, there's the what is it called?
Well, there's the ruler of the first.
Yeah.
There's the sun and the ruler of the first, which are the querent or the ill person, and then there's the ruler of the sixth, which is the illness, and then the moon.
Yeah, so if there's Mars, or if Mars or Saturn is giving a hostile aspect to the moon, then I would see that as the equivalent to a secondary of the significator too.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I agree. But, horary's got like, oh my God, there's so many rules.
It's that's really fun though. But the moon is really important, and this seems like a really powerful way of getting it more in contact with the moon and
and I think, we live it, we're talking about stress and anxiety and pushing and doing all this busy stuff. But if you actually look at the moon cycle, we're supposed to be kind of striving hard for 2 weeks, and then we're supposed to be relaxing, or, it's like the seasons, right? You're not pushing hard in winter. You're not supposed to be, right? So you look at those those first 2 weeks of pushing harder, And then the second 2 weeks are consolidation
Mhm.
and release. And I think in creating them and in working with people with their cycles, I'm a huge fan of getting people in tune with that so that they're not, the big thing everyone shows up with at the moment is, besides nervous system, is adrenal exhaustion.
Oh,
Everyone's shot, right? Everyone's exhausted. They're go, 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 because we forget to have this lunar rhythm of build, create, consolidate, relax. And so I think by using the essences, it's just a ritual to remind you, oh, it's the dark of the moon. Maybe I shouldn't be pushing really hard. And maybe it's okay to lie on the couch and read a book for 5 hours.
Love that for everybody.
Or binge watch Netflix or whatever.
Whatever
right?
you need to do. Yeah.
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 And I love your art, the art of the moon itself. You have that beautiful visual of the moon from new to full. And so if anybody wants to order some, they can go to astrologyofhealth.com. Is that the best place?
Oh yeah. They're there.
Do you do anything based on like the client's moon phase? So everyone's born on a different moon phase. So is that important for you?
Yes, I'm actually obsessed with moon phases.
Okay.
So did you know that about me? No, maybe you didn't.
I don't know.
Oh,
she's a full moon.
I'm a full moon.
Yeah, full moon. And what are you? What?
I'm disseminating.
Okay, so I'm disseminating as well. So, which is the teaching moon, right?
Okay.
Yes. So there's using the visible lunar phase, but I often get people to use their lunar phase return. So when the moon comes back to the phase when you were born, so like full moon or disseminating, I get people to start cycles there as well. Like, especially for females or those that have had menstrual cycles but might not have them anymore, but also people without uteruses can do this as well, or men. If somebody has a menstrual cycle, there's this building phase. So the first 2 weeks of your cycle, even though you have your period, you can wait a day or two to feel better, but that's the pushing phase. It's like your own personal new moon to full moon phase, because the day you get your period, very likely 14 days later, you're going to ovulate or thereabout. So that's your own new to full moon phase where you can exercise harder, your body deals with carbohydrates better. So I'm going totally sports nutrition here. You can be more restrictive with food and you don't have as much cravings. So I actually use the first half of somebody's lunar phase cycle for like weight loss. You can work out harder and be stricter with food and be okay with it. Whereas the second half of the phase, so I've jumped. So if somebody has a menstrual cycle, you absolutely want to use the menstrual cycle for that build and then relax. Because the second half of the phase, due to hormones, we know we crave more food, we're more tired, we don't recover from exercise as well. We just want chocolate and salt. Let's be real.
Everything.
Yeah. So that's your balsamic phase, right? But if somebody doesn't have a cycle because they have an IUD, they're on the pill, they are past menstrual age, or they don't have a uterus, people that don't have cycles, there's a lot of people, I get them to use their lunar phase as a cycle, because we are all cyclical. And yes, we have the moon out there, but using your lunar phase is actually using your own cycle, because that goes all the way back to 28 days or 28 and a quarter days or whatever it is from the moment you were born.
Yeah.
So that's actually your cycle of 28 days. And I've had great results with people, especially, and again, because it's my age bracket, I have all these people that are just hitting menopause and they don't have cycles anymore. And they're very sad that they don't have cycles. And I'm like, but you still have a cycle, right?
That is so helpful.
Oh my God, it's amazing. I taught this to a group of naturopaths recently that actually didn't even know I did astrology, and I kind of showed them my underside and showed them my, tie-dye side.
Yeah.
And I had a lady come up at the end and she was crying. And she was like, I just need to say thank you. I have always felt left. She was born without a uterus, right? So she's female. She has ovaries, she makes hormones, but she's never had a cycle. And she's like, I've always felt really left out because I don't have a cycle. And she's like, you have actually just given me a cycle. I was like, oh, it's amazing.
I know.
That's why you teach stuff, right? Those are those moments.
Exactly.
But, you know, for men, for everybody without uteruses or uteruses that aren't bleeding anymore, you know, it's amazing to think you have this beautiful cycle. So I actually get people to do that sometimes more than I get them to do the visible lunar phase. So many options is what it is.
Using that cycle, you're going to recommend your workout regimen is going to be different for each phase of the cycle. And your nutrition, like what kind of foods you're going to eat, and the herbs for each. Yeah, I
haven't really gone into herbs yet for each.
Okay,
but that's a good idea. I should.
Maybe. Yeah.
So if she's full moon, then her cycle would her full moon is actually a new moon.
Right? Yeah, if you want to do that, but if you're cycling, you want to stick to your actual real menstrual cycle, because that's truly your hormonal cycle. It's designed to work with your hormones that way, right? Because the whole idea is the first half of the cycle, women are lower hormone, right? We have no progesterones happening. We have estrogen coming around day 5 to 7, peaking at ovulation. Ovulation has to occur for a big surge in progesterone. Second half of the cycle is considered the high hormone cycle. It's progesterone that makes us tired and cranky and bloated and all, you know, estrogen's still there, but it drops a bit, but progesterone stays high. And so that's that relaxed phase. You want to eat, you know, sea salt, dark chocolate, all that stuff.
And this
Lindt, my idea is Lindt should just actually remarket dark chocolate, sea salt dark chocolate as the PMS bar, right? Yes. Like we actually do need more salt in the second half of the cycle. It's not a problem that we have. People feel bloated in the second half of the cycle because you're holding more fluid extracellularly when you typically hold more of the fluid sits intra or inside of the cell. You have more extra. And so by having more electrolytes in the second half of the cycle, more sodium, it helps to pull more fluid back in.
Oh my gosh,
there's nothing wrong with dark chocolate sea salt.
So you're talking about that's the extracellular matrix has more fluid. Okay.
It's not just that your uterus is double in size and it's pushing on other organs. It's actually
that whole bloated feeling is that there's a slight water shift from intra to extra. And that's what makes us feel bloated. Because often you can get on a scale and you're like, oh, I'm not, I feel like everything's fitting different. Get on the scale, you might even be sitting at the same weight. And you're like, well, how come? So by having more electrolytes, you know, magnesium, potassium doesn't hurt as well, but more we crave sodium at that time because it helps to redistribute the water fluid. It's not water. Yeah.
Okay, that's so cool.
My brain has a lot of weird layers to it. Sorry, we've gone in like 80.
I know.
This is what's amazing. You know, this is what's amazing about you is you have all these different sides. And
and so in wrapping up, like, what do you focus on right now? Like your day to day as a person and practitioner, what is it like?
Are you focused on, you mean for myself or for?
I guess in your practice, like, are you doing client stuff? Are you working as an educator more? Are you?
Yes, all of the above, which is why I never finish things. No, I do see clients. I tend to see clients 1 to 2 days a week, but I'm currently on sabbatical from clients. I'm trying to take 3 to 4 months off to finish writing a book because I spread myself too thin and then I don't get the writing done. So I'm taking wait list for people for clients. But I have seen clients for 30 years and it's my first break besides having a baby. So I was like, okay, I think I'm allowed to have a break. So I'm an educator. That's my big, you know, I lecture at a university 1 to 2 days a week. And then I do a lot of online, you know, online lecturing is so big. So yeah, yes, all of the above.
And if folks want to find out more about you, is the best place to go astrologyofhealth.com?
Yeah, astrologyofhealth.com is the website, or it's the same on Instagram. There's a lot of classes that are pre-recorded. If people are like, oh my God, medical astrology, I've never heard of this before. And they want, you know, baby beginner courses all the way to really in-depth courses. And there's a lot of one-offs, and there's a section that links to all the podcasts I've done. So you'll be linked when this goes live, and you can listen to a good 15 hours of me for free.
Awesome.
With all the podcasts.
And all your classes
So,
are super affordable though too. And you have a package deal if you're just like, yes, everything. I want
yes,
everything.
yeah.
So
It's so
that's
fun when
cool.
people get that. They're like, oh, it's so fun. I don't have to decide, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So trying to create that into, trying to make it a really well-rounded kind of bigger courses and little courses. But I halfway through my houses book.
That's
and
exciting.
then my big tome there's a big medical astrology book coming in a year or two. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kara, for being on the show. This has been so fun. And
I will send you some lunar essence.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Yeah, I definitely am excited to try those.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course. Thank you for being on here. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day.